Hello. So the scene I've picked comes at the very end of the movie when Michelle has been arrested after attempting to pickpocket the undercover officer's money at the racetrack. He is on his way from the cell to the waiting room to meet John to talk about how he's feeling. Alright, so the first thing I want us to be aware of is the overall composition and form of this scene. Each frame that we'll see is completely solitary, meaning that although both Michelle and John are talking with one another, they are depicted alone. There are no over-the-shoulder shots or anything like that, which could include both of them in the frame. I think this signifies that Michelle, throughout the whole movie, has been completely dejected and is living a very exclusive existence. So let's keep that in mind as we watch. So the first thing that Michelle will talk about is the idea of why he's depressed in jail. He says it's not just the walls, it's just the fact that he's been caught for what he's done. So this refers back to a conversation Michel had with his friend Jacques and the head police officer about what he calls supermen. Supermen align heavily with Nietzsche's idea about the Übermensch. So what Michel is saying here is that he believes there are some people in society who are so incredible they should be able to live above the law. When he says this, Michel is kind of suggesting that he himself is a Superman, and by pickpocketing and living away from the reins of society, he's able to live his own life. And he should be able to do that, but he's been arrested. And because of that, he no longer feels that he's a Superman anymore. He's completely lost who he is in this scene, and he's kind of mad at John, even though she's done nothing. And it's more a reflection of his inner personality rather than how he's actually feeling. So here, Michelle has to go back to his room, and I want to I want to bring up the parallel between Michelle's cell and his own room at home. As you can see here, both are incredibly barren. As we've seen throughout the film, all Michelle really needs are his own thoughts. However, now that he's fallen from his superhuman pedestal, his ideas have become basically incorrect. This causes him to question his entire existence, and he basically entertains the idea of suicide because he feels there's no other meaning. Now, this shot right here is incredibly interesting to me because just like every other scene in this movie, the director makes it super particular, and what he's doing here is showing Michelle looking at his own shadow as if he's like looking in a mirror. And here we can play this. Although it's basically like he no longer sees himself, and he's been reduced to nothingness because he's been caught and is in jail. Now he turns away, he doesn't want to look at it, and he starts thinking about John again because he realizes maybe he was wrong about this whole idea of the superhuman and what he should do. So now he's getting a letter from John, who she hasn't been there for 3 weeks, and basically she's saying the baby's been ill and she hasn't been able to come because she said to take care of her son or her daughter. I forget which gender it is. But this makes John incredibly happy because although he hasn't seen her, he knows that she's thinking about him. Just the fact that, he's an incredibly selfish person. So just the fact that someone else is thinking about him now gives him enough to go on and try to keep living a fulfilling life. So the next scene of the film is the reconciliation of Michelle's life. Somehow he's been able to find love with John, and she's able to love him back. A lot of the philosophical ideas we've looked at in this movie come from the fact of like public reconciliation and owning up to your mistakes and seeing people for who they really are and accepting them anyway. So John is really the only living person. Michelle's mother was able to see him for who he was and accept him, but she's dead now. So John is the only living person who is able to accept him for who he is and still appreciate his presence. Michelle realizes this and comes to his senses. He knows that through this journey, his journey's been full of mistakes, but now he's able to tether himself to some form of goodness, as like Ivan was tethering himself to Alyosha and Boris Karamazov. So Michelle's finally been saved in a sense. The other thing, I'll turn this up. There's good music now coming in, and this is the music that plays as he's pickpocketing at the racetrack, and it's basically what uh, it signifies, like his exhilaration, his his uh his feeling when he's like doing something that he actually loves. So now he's with John